Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 305 Insights. I'm your host, Alan Somerton. Co hosting with me today is Eric, and once again, we're doing our picks of the week. Now, as usual, we're going to start off with the NFL and finish off with a little college football. So let's dive right into it. Eric, what do you have for us this week?
Oh, thank you, Alan, for introducing me that this time. That was great. I appreciate it. Feel a part of the pod here. With that being said, just to recap, I am looking at 2-0 with my locks of the week. Uh, Deeply going to go into that, looking at some of these weekend lineups. First game that does catch my eye is the Ravens at Chiefs. Ravens at Chiefs. So they have the spread is -2.5. Um, I think it's a combination of two teams going in the direction of Clash of the Titans. I think that the right now Chiefs are looking at weapons that are not there. Rasheed Rice is out. Xavier Worthy is out. The running game is not even in sight. Travis Kelsey, obviously, he's on the back end of his career. Might be his last season even playing. So it just doesn't look like the old Casey. The only thing that I do see Casey doing in this game is always being consistent with their defense. With that being said, I do see the Ravens covering big here. I think they actually win by a touchdown. I think it's going to be one of those statement games that the Ravens are going to just be more physical. They're just overpowering. I do see that actually, yes, the Ravens have lost 2 games in a row with the Lions, this past Monday night, and then the Bills at the end of the 4th quarter. But needless to say, they are scoring over 30 points on those 2 losses, given that the Chiefs do have a better defense, but I just think that the Ravens are way overpowering, to the Kansas City Chiefs, and I'm very confident that they actually get that cover. Any thoughts on that, Alan?
Yeah, I mean, this game's really weird for me because I thought the Ravens be the best team in the NFL. And right now, they do not look the part. I am not worried about the Chiefs because they basically treat September like extended training camp. And to your point, Travis Kelsey's at the end of his career. He's not a number one, but in this offense right now, he has to be treated as a number one because he's the only option there at this point. That being said, I don't know what I think of the Ravens at this point. They can run the ball game one, and then against the Browns, they don't do anything. And then they abandon it against the Lions. And Henry's fumbling every single game. And this defense that was supposedly built for a Super Bowl run has been non-existent. I do not count that Browns game because you have Joe Flacco as a starting quarterback. So if you shut the Browns down, cool. That's every team's going to do that at this point. So until I see it, I mean, you have them winning by a touchdown. I could see the Ravens winning. I just don't see them dominating in the way that you're kind of laying it out.
I
I
mean,
have
well,
to
let's
see it first before I can jump on it because through the first 3 games, like, yeah, they've run up and down the field, but if this game's close in the 4th quarter, I have no reason to believe that the Ravens are going to win because they keep on proving that they can't hold a lead and or take the pressure at this point.
Yeah, I mean, this is, it's just looking at the Ravens and the way they've played offensively. They can win on the ground or on the air. It's just not playing all 4 quarters of football. Um, but I just think it's too much firepower for the Chiefs to handle. That's the reason why. I mean, the reason why it just caught my eye is just because the cover is right now at -2.5. I mean, it's either you take a money line or you could even add that half a point and just go by 3 and, even add a little bit more money to it, add a difference to it. But I do feel confident in looking at that moving into, week 4. So With that being said, next game that does catch my eye is Minnesota Vikings at Pittsburgh Steelers. The spread right now currently is at minus 2.5. The over under is 40.5. Minnesota travels to Pittsburgh. It is a tough place to play, but I am very confident in the Vikings with the fact that they're just more of a complete team. They're more of a cohesive team with the defense that actually, they played against the Cincinnati Bengals they had their backup quarterback in there, but it's it's the fact that I believe that the Vikings defense will be able to get Aaron Rodgers to feel uncomfortable. They can take away the running game and make Aaron Rodgers, which he's a 41-year-old quarterback, not very mobile. I think it's a defensive game, which is plays in Pittsburgh's hand, but still yet to see Pittsburgh's defense play any type of Pittsburgh defense that we expected coming into the season with all the acquisitions that they did in the offseason. It's probably one of the most disappointing things I've seen this season. Looking at last week's game, which was one of my picks, that I did have the Pats winning that game. It was actually a very close game. It was until towards the end that a veteran team that has been experiencing close games was able to close it out against a young team that's still trying to develop. When the Pittsburgh Steelers are winning, which if they've gotten 2 wins so far this season, it's from the Jets, very close game, and the Patriots that have been a very close game. I think if we're looking at the Vikings compared to those two teams, um, the Vikings are just an all around better team. If it wasn't I think Carson Wentz is actually going to just do the job that he needs to get done. Jason, Jordan Mason's going to look great. DJ Hawkinson is now all of a sudden becoming a receiving tight end for the Minnesota Vikings, and it's actually a great player prop pick, I would say, going into this game. So yeah, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, to be fair, Pittsburgh did force 5 turnovers. I just wanna put that on the record. That being said, I think Minnesota's gonna have another good game. This defense looks interesting in the sense of how they're able to play, and again, if we talked about it once, we're gonna talk about it 1,000 times. With Minnesota, you trust their head coach with a backup to the backup at this point because whoever's playing quarterback in this offense seems to have a second act to their career, or they just produce at a rate in which nobody expects them to. So, that being said, I mean, I think Minnesota wins this game. So,
Yep. I feel pretty confident. It was between this game and the next game that I'm about to bring up, which is my lock of the week. This one was actually right in contention for it, but I do have the next game that I do want to bring up is Green Bay Packers at Dallas Cowboys. The spread is minus 6.5. Over under is 47.5. Two things about that. Just looking at it right now, Cowboys defense is atrocious with the struggling Caleb Williams and the Bears offense going into it. I guess maybe it could be in the factor of Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams are finally clicking together and being on the same page. But there's something about that Packers team that coming off of that loss last week against the Browns, this is the game that they actually make a statement and show why they are heavy contenders in the NFC. Um, Dallas Cowboys, they're going to be out with CD Lamb for about 3 to 4 weeks, which that's a humongous loss to them. It's going to be George Pickens and Jake Ferguson to try to put up the points with Javante Williams. But with that being said, you cannot sleep on the Packers defense. I think that the Packers defense keeps them in a game that it's going to be impossible for the Cowboys to try to come back and answer. That's why I'm very confident with Green Bay and this big spread with my lock of the week with Green Bay covering that 6.5.
I don't think they're gonna be able to move the ball effectively against Green Bay. I think, there's gonna be a quote unquote "revenge game" for a certain somebody on the Packers.
Absolutely.
And uh, there's not a lot of names that stand out to casual fans when it comes to the Packers on offense, but and I know they lost to Cleveland. I think that's one of 2 reasons. One, Cleveland does have a really good defense. Two, that's one of those games where you're not looking ahead, but you think it's a gimme game, even though there's no such thing in the NFL. But you really thought that you were buying into the Super Bowl hype and the, "Oh, we're gonna go undefeated" type talk that even Matt LaFleur said was ridiculous. So, I think this is the perfect game for the Packers to right the proverbial ship, and I agree with you on that aspect. I think they're gonna cover.
Yeah. Like you said, I think it's a revenge game, not just for Parsons. I think it's a revenge game for the whole organization off of that trap game that were in last week. They looked ahead. I think it's a sign of a young team that are looking ahead, and they got humbled last week. And I think that moving into this week, they're going to make a statement. So with that being said, I did mention that is my lock of the week. Feeling very confident about these three games. The one pick that I do want to talk about is the dog of the week. I was heartbroken last week about my dog of the week with my rant with the Rams playing the Eagles at that spread at -3, +3.5. I
Yeah, what
did
happened with
say
that?
that yeah, very confident. It looked very confident with that field goal attempt. I was like, "Oh, I'm in the clear here," but obviously, worst case scenario, block field goal for a touchdown. So, hate to take that L like that, but looking ahead, looking at this week, the one game that I do see as a dog of the week is, um the Philadelphia Eagles at Tampa Bay Bucks. It's a 1 p.m. kickoff. The spread is -3.5, and the over and under is 44.5. I'm picking the Bucks as the dog of the week to make this cover. I think they actually end up pulling off this game winner. The only thing that does have me a concern with this is prior to making this pick, I found out later in the day that Mike Evans is going to possibly missing time for 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So that's the one concern that I do have. I've always said that the Eagles secondary is, for the most part, a little bit of a worrisome in it. Spoke about it last week with the Rams, with Devontae Parker. I mean Devontae Parker. Listen to me, Devontae
Old
Adams,
school.
and yeah, little throwback there. Devontae Adams and Puka Nakua. But like I said, it is in Tampa at a 1 o'clock game. It's going to be high. I think the elements of the game might play a factor into it as well. But looking at the Bucks and what they've shown consistency in their offense, and also defense is one of those that it's a no name defense that she's the head coach of Todd Bowles. I think they end up having another good day out there, and Barkley might end up having another performance like he did last week. Your thoughts on that, Alan?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said. There's not much more feedback I can provide there, but I'm on the same boat with that one.
All right. So just in recap, look, looking at this week, if I'm picking at three games, I'm looking at the Ravens to cover at Kansas City -2.5. I have the Vikings -2.5, and I have Green Bay -6.5 covering the spread. And my dog of the week is the Bucks, and I will buy that half a point with the +4. Looking into the NFL week. Those are my picks.
All right, good luck with that, folks. You're in good hands with Eric when it comes to the NFL picks. Now we move on to the sweet college game, and this is a loaded week. I mean, the Friday slate alone has FSU at Virginia, TCU, and Arizona State. But I'm gonna go in on some games that are very dicey, but I'm gonna touch them. So first off,
Pardon me?
we'll go by, I guess, the earlier games and whatnot. But I got the team that let me down last week, USC, that I almost made my lock of the week, but I
Mhm.
changed it to Oklahoma at the last minute. So currently 2-0, my locks of the week. And I'm going back to USC. Now, this is a
Oh,
noon game for them. This is a game that they're going to Illinois. Now, Illinois just recently got, and by recently, obviously last week, got destroyed by Indiana, and they suffered going into the game. They were missing some guys on the back end, cornerback and safety and whatnot. And then as the game progressed, they lost more players in terms of their back end. And obviously, that didn't make the Indiana game look good, and I'm not sure if a lot of those players are coming back. So the problem is USC is getting some wide receivers back, and I think it's again it's a 9 a.m. start for them technically because it's a noon start, but currently the line is at 6.5. I think USC covers that. Unfortunately, going to go back in on a point spread for USC. So
Is it because of the fact that you saw that Illinois game that just makes you feel that confident? Because
it's
we
it
know that we with USC, it's like they're coming out a little bit. It's a good testament. But is it because you're leaning more towards the cover because of what you saw from Illinois last week?
It's what I saw in the sense of you're losing like players on their defense are dropping like flies. So if they're
Okay.
not getting some of those guys back, like I believe it's their safety is in the concussion protocol, so it's not sure he's coming back. They're down a few starters at cornerback. Again, this is a Lincoln Riley offense. I think the defense will do enough, even though they're at Illinois. I don't think Illinois can. They're not for some reason they're not really able to run the ball this year, even though that's a Brett Bielema thing. Whether it was at Wisconsin or Arkansas. But again, I think USC has enough dogs on the front end, on the front line, to prevent an effective run game. But even then, even if Illinois is able to run the ball a little bit, you're kind of going to have to drive up and down the field consistently. And I'm not sure if that's going to happen if USC is able to pick this defense apart in the same way that Indiana was. I'm not saying it's going to be like a 69-13 game or whatever it was, but again, if this is at Illinois, it's a noon game and the spread is 6.5. That tells you a lot what odds makers think of Illinois right now
Hmm.
with the health that they have for a home game. So
Gotcha.
the next game I got LSU at Ole Miss, number 4 versus number 13. And by the way, USC is number 21 versus 23. Illinois. Illinois fell from top 10 team all the way to 23. LSU is a 1.5 point underdog because it's at Ole Miss. I'm taking LSU because I'm not sure if Simmons is going to be starting at cornerback. I should have looked that up honestly. If he is, I'm definitely taking LSU. He has a penchant to turn the ball over. And LSU's defense so far this year under Blake Baker and all the transfers that they got. And surprisingly, finally, it took them another 2 years to finally use Harold Perkins properly. Not using him as a cover linebacker, but instead of like the Swiss Army knife, he could be as a edge rusher slash disruptor. I think that Ole Miss having that penchant of turning the ball over, plus the way LSU's playing on defense, this could get ugly for LSU or for you, Ole Miss, in terms of trying to score points. Even if they do, I do trust LSU's offense currently. I know they haven't looked that great. I think they will eventually right the ship. This plus 1.5 is an interesting line. I think people are hesitant because of how sketchy LSU's offense has looked. And then you have Lane Kiffin's reputation as an offensive guru, but I don't think that's how it plays out. I got LSU this game.
Um, I actually like this pick. I think LSU. You kind of hit it. Just from a perspective of what I've seen is that LSU has always struggled in the beginning of a season to win those big games. I think for the past 2 seasons, they they do have a hard schedule. They always end up playing some type of ranked team that's above the top 10 or top 15, and then they get on the prime time. They get the prime time slot, and then they end up losing it. Um, I think the program itself, and at least this year, they do have that mojo of going in first game coming off. I mean, now it does kind of go without any weight or credibility, but that first game when they beat Clemson, it felt like a game that I thought LSU would go ahead and lose, but then they end up winning. And credit to Clemson's defense too. Clemson does have a good enough defense to be very competitive, to then follow up with another big win against Florida as well. Even though Florida is on the downside of their program and what the season is, they still have a great defense and they're still able to put up 20 points against them. I think LSU's got their mojo in a sense, and they have that confidence going into this game. I do agree with you on it. Yeah, uh, nothing else much to say on that. I do agree with the LSU game. I like that pick a lot.
And now we come to I got 3 more games. I'm doing a total of 5, but I have my lock of the week right here. Indiana at Iowa. Indiana is a 7.5-point favorite. Lock it in, folks. Indiana is going to win this game by double digits. So the 7.5 is free money. I mean, Indiana looks like they're gonna be like last year's team in the sense of like they're blowing people out. And I think they have the right quarterback for Frank Signetti. When you've got Fernando Mendoza, who's from Miami, I believe he played at Columbus.
Yes, he did.
6'5", 225.
Hmm.
I know I've raved about him before to you, but let's refresh the memory. Last year at Cal, with minimal support in terms of the talent that he had around him, he had a 68.7 completion percentage, 3,000 passing yards, or 3,004, 16 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. So far this year, Eric, he's at 76.8 completion percentage, 14 touchdowns, 0 picks. And he's only taken 3 sacks. Last year, he took 41. He's got a better supporting cast around him. Signetti has a really good system that really allows their quarterback to be just a director in terms of a symphony of offense. And I just think, again, Indiana is going to run into one of those teams where, like a vastly superior talented team in the sense of, whether they got Oregon on their schedule and Penn State. Those are going to be some tough games. But Iowa can't move the ball. They're back to that weird thing where they can't really move the ball at all. And you're going up against an offensive guru in Signetti. I know it's at Iowa. They're going to figure out the silent count or whatever they need to do to keep this offense humming. 7.5 to me, easy money for Indiana.
Do you feel like you're running off the high of this past week against Illinois?
I think Illinois is a respectable team. Again, I think the problem is you're running into the fact that they lost so much talent on the back end. And so they just went out and just put it on them. I don't think Iowa can score. So, I mean, they're currently 3-1, but they lost to Iowa State 16-13. The Rutgers game, they scored 38-28. And then other than that, they faced the University of Albany 34-7 and UMass 47-7. I think people think their offense looks better because of the talent that they face. I mean, as soon as you face someone like Iowa State, you're only putting up 13. Rutgers, again, God bless Greg Schiano for the miracles that he works at that school. But the Rutgers is an okay team at best. So again, once Iowa starts facing real talent, they're not going to move the ball. And Indiana's not even like this, crazy defense, like a Manny Diaz Penn State type defense where they're always blitzing and doing all this crazy stuff and they have a bunch of talent. But from the offensive side of the ball, Signetti proved it last year, you know, how they were able to score efficiently. And now he has a quarterback that I think people can realize are becoming a sort of it's that cog in the bicycle that can really just take things to the next level. And I think with Mendoza, people are starting to realize that this kid has all the proverbial measurables that you want. And, I think coming into the season, people thought he was a fringe top tier quarterback pick in terms of being possible going to the NFL. You had your Lenore Sellers, you had your Garrett Nussmeyers, you had your Cade Klubniks, even though I didn't really think Cade would be a great NFL prospect, and you had the hype around Arch Manning. Mendoza was kind of on the wayside, but again, like, this is one of those kids that he went 21 of 23 against Illinois with 5 touchdowns. Again, this was the number ninth ranked team in the country, and he's making them look like they were Old Dominion or something like that. So I know it's one of those things where, like, yeah, it is like, oh, you're coming off that high, but I think it's also one of those things with Iowa where it's just like I don't see them being able to go blow for blow with them. Like if Iowa puts up 45, do I see I'm sorry, if Indiana puts up 45, do I see Iowa putting up 38? Or well, I guess they would have to put up 39. I'm not seeing it. So
You're just thinking at the pace of what Indiana could do. It's just Iowa can't keep up in a sense. That they can't keep up offensively
it's a
with
shootout and it's only going to involve one team.
Anton Boo. Exactly.
So that's my lock of the week. So let's keep the streak going. Indiana. And now we're coming to the two big games. I'm not running away from these games. These games are just massive implications. You got Oregon at Penn State. That is going to be a whiteout game. That's at prime time. There's nothing like crazier than Happy Valley with a whiteout. And for me, I think we've talked about Penn State's schedule where it was Villanova, FIU, and I can't remember the first team. Um, it was 3
I'm
bums in
on
a
it.
row. Thank you. It was 3 absolute like, it's the worst out of conference schedule you will see in your life. Like, again, Villanova's a basketball team. Somehow they have a football program. You know,
Nevada.
Nevada. Oh, even better. You didn't even face UNLV, the good program in that state. You face Nevada. All right. And the problem is they've clearly been on neutral. They're just trying to win games without getting hurt and not showing anything. So it's in the opposite vein of what's happening. Like, let's say, for example, let me pick a random team, FSU. FSU has faced Kent State. They win by a billion. They face, every time they're facing the teams that they're supposed to beat easily, East Texas A&M, they beat them by a billion and a half. Like, people were worried because going into the fourth quarter against FIU, Penn State was up, I think, like 20-6 or something like that, and they finally won 38-6 or whatever it was. It's
34-0.
huh? Oh yeah, I'm sorry, they didn't score. That was the whole thing. Yeah, so they were up like 20-0, and then they finished 34-0. It's one of those things where I don't think Penn State has shown what they can do fully. And meanwhile, on the other side, you have evidence of Oregon going up against the carcass of Oklahoma State and winning 69-3 or whatever the score was, 63-3. And then they just recently beat Oregon State handedly, and then they beat Northwestern as well. So it's been a pretty easy go around for Oregon. Oregon's a 3.5 point underdog. I'm taking Oregon. They're going into Happy Valley. They're covering the 3.5. Do they win outright? I think they do.
You probably want
I
to buy some points though.
I do think. Well, again, they're 3.5 point underdog. Like, they're plus 3.5. So I don't have to worry about, like, I mean, even if they lose by,
I say +4. I'll take the
you know,
+4, +5.
again, unfortunately, it's one of these things with James Franklin. Big game James is not a thing. I think I had the stats in one of my preseason previews. His record against top 10 opponents is horrible. AP top 10 opponents. And it's just, again, it's one of the things, like I was telling you earlier, until I see it, then I can't pick James Franklin. I'm sorry. I do think this team has an edge in terms of veteran experience. You got the best running back tandem in the country at Penn State. Drew Aller is a junior. He big arm. Again, he's got those measurables, like 6'4", somewhere around there, 6'4", 6'5", 25 pounds as well. Like just everything you want in a quarterback. But the last time he had over 250 passing yards was that overtime game against USC in the Rose Bowl, which I think was like 2 years ago. So again, their offense isn't made to be a high flying offense. It's really ground and pound with the two running backs that they have back there, who I think combined for 20 rushing touchdowns last year and like 2,000 rushing yards. So do you really need to pass the ball all the time? No. But when you need to, it hasn't been there for Drew Aller. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that game?
Bold. I would never touch this game at all.
I
I
know.
would
I told you I was
be
touching
that.
games that people would not want to
I would
touch,
not. I
but
would
I'm
not
very
touch that
handsy this
game.
week.
Um. Okay. Pause. No, but in my opinion, I wouldn't touch this game. I can see it going either way. I can totally see what you're saying that Penn State hasn't really proven anything, and even them being ranked at that high at that high position, and even looking at the games that they've already played this year, you can easily make an argument that um, they're not necessarily blowing people out of the water. Um, but maybe they just don't want to open up their playbook. They don't want to get anything on film or anything of that matter. But at the same time, too, Oregon looks good. Oregon looks really good. But the only reason, if this wasn't at Penn State at wideout, I would agree with you 100%. It's just something about wideout and being at Penn State. It just doesn't make me feel good. Does not make me feel confident in it. But at least it's not your lock of the week. So.
No, no, no. I'm not that bold. So the last game, number 17, Alabama at number 5, Georgia. Georgia is a 2.5 point favorite. Georgia's taking this game. Although Jam Miller, the running back for Alabama, is coming back, their true number one running back. I think that is important because I don't think people realize Alabama has not been able to run the ball effectively this year when facing a team with a pulse. So you face Florida State, you couldn't run the ball after the first drive. You face Wisconsin, and again, you know my thoughts on Wisconsin. Like that team's not there anymore. It's not the Wisconsin that everybody's used to. Wisconsin was able to outrush them. So if they can't get the ball rolling with the rushing attack, I don't see how Kalen DeBoer is going to pull a Josh Heupel and just confuse Kirby Smart. And because Tennessee really just, again, I give full credit to Heupel. I know he's got a lot of like people think he has a gimmicky offense. And I told you and Miguel, like, I need to see the second half. And that's when the score was 21-7 and they were scoring like on every possession. And I was saying that this is crazy, but I need to see the second half. And up until like the fourth quarter, I know again the score was like what, 45 to or 48-45, but there was a stretch where Kirby did slow them down. And I think Kirby Smart is going to do the same thing to this Alabama offense. I don't think they're using Ryan Williams the right way. I'm intrigued to see how they use him in terms of Alabama. If they're using Ryan Williams differently than the way they used him at Florida State, I think it will be a more competitive game. But if they're doing this thing where they're forcing Ryan Williams to play the slot after what he did to Georgia last year, where he went off for, I think it was like almost 200 yards, if not more, and he had one of the catches of the year there and with a juke, and he scored that explosive like play. So it was over like, I think 50 or 60 yards. If they use him in that sense as a boundary wide receiver, I think it's going to be a better game for Alabama because you have a little bit more weapons this year with Isaiah Horton and the transfer from Washington. His name escapes me right now, that he had a really good game against Florida State. But if they start using Ryan Williams in the slot like they did against Florida State, I think he's going to be hearing footsteps in the same way that he was hearing at Florida State. He had a lot of drops. He did not want to go down the middle. And this offense can't afford those drops. They can't afford to stall out because then Georgia's going to control the flow of the game. They're going to try and keep on pounding the ball like Kirby Smart likes to do. And they're just going to make sure that they're going to start breaking down Alabama. So, again, my key to that game, it's very weird, but how they use Ryan Williams for Alabama. I still think that Kirby Smart is one of the brightest defensive minds in college football. He is a savant, and I just don't see him having two slip ups in a row when it comes to going up against Alabama. So I think Georgia covers the 2.5 point spread.
Yeah, I think it's just what makes it easier for me. It's a no brainer. I will take Georgia. Georgia will cover it, and the reason why is just as simple as Kirby Smart's the better coach. Kirby Smart has the better program, has a better culture. A lot of it could be eye opening when you see Bama being losing to Florida State, right? They go into a hostile environment. But the fact, the way that they lost to Florida State speaks volumes to a lot of things. And uh, I really, I mean, everybody's been saying it. Like right now, Alabama, nobody's really talking about them because they didn't play any opponent that's talked about, and there's no big headliners. But looking at this week, it is a headliner. A lot of people are going to be watching this game. I think Kirby Smart is the better coach, better program. How do you stop Alabama? By having a signature defense, and that's what Kirby Smart has. You kind of allude to it earlier, having one of their star running backs, their workhorse or their dog, right, of who they have as a running back in the backfield coming back in. But um, their strength is going against the other player, with the other team's strength. I think Kirby Smart's gonna um, make it complicated, force them to be one dimensional, and I think that Georgia wins easily. It's actually going to be a pretty ugly game, in my opinion.
I think something I need to point out as well now, hearing you talk about this, when we look at Alabama, Alabama on paper is one of the, if not the most talented team in the country. When we're talking about the blue chip ratio and over the past 3, 4 years in terms of the recruiting classes and whatnot, I know for sure they're top three. I don't know if they're one or two if Georgia's number one, but on paper they're a very talented team. And when you look especially at this offensive line for Alabama, with they have a guy who's considered the best center in the SEC. They've got Caden Proctor, who is we've talked about him before offline, and I'm sure I've talked about him on podcasts previously with the review of the FSU game. He is a physical freak. He doesn't look like he's wanting to play football. If there's 80 snaps in a game, well, yeah, let's say there's 45 snaps on offense. He's like focused 100% on like 35 of them. And the other 10, you're just like, that's not a first round pick. Like, he was getting bullied by a true freshman defensive end at FSU. And this is a guy who, again, he was rated as a 3-star. He's one of the Desir twins. That's really cool that the kid's developing. However, we're talking about Georgia. Like, even this NIL era, they've got 5-star after 5-star after 4-star after 4-star on the defensive line. And I don't see, to your point, the culture aspect. I don't see it at Alabama right now. You don't have that motivator in Nick Saban. Kalen DeBoer is a different type of guy. He's a great head coach. He's won everywhere. But the South is different. I hate all this like SEC, all this like, our conference is better and all that stuff. But we all know, like living here in Florida, we all know what it's like at some of these programs. And especially with the standard that Nick Saban set at Alabama, it's probably the worst job in America to be in right now because of the expectations of the fan base. and Kalen DeBoer just has a different style of coaching, and I don't think it appears to mesh with this roster that everybody thought. Again, it's one of the most talented rosters in the country, but it's just one of those things where something's missing. And Kirby Smart's going to find that something that's missing and pound it into existence so everybody can see it. That
I
being
agree with.
said,
Yeah. I mean, you literally just you're adding more emphasis to my argument. I think it's just it's a culture thing, and um, you know, looking at the type of talent that Alabama coming into the season, um, you can have all the talent in the world, but it's the way that you answer when you get smacked in the mouth. And I think, not that I think, just looking at what I saw against FSU, it wasn't. It was the fact of how they lost. Um, you're getting beat, and you're going to tell me that looking at Georgia's roster is significantly better than what FSU has, and it's just not. That's why I think it's like that spread. It should be way more. I think it's just out of respect because of Alabama. But
it's a reputation thing. It's where the money comes in from. Again, like, we talked about it a few weeks ago with how casuals gamble. A lot of casuals think Alabama's still Alabama. But again, the thing to your point, one final thing before I keep on diving into everything. The thing that really disturbed me about Alabama against FSU was the effort. You saw, like, once certain people got, like you said, punched in the mouth. Like, Ryan Williams wasn't the same after the first red zone drive where Ashlyn Barker blasted him out of bounds on like the 3-yard line. He was not the same. That's when he started dropping balls after that, going up the middle, and he heard, footsteps. The safety for Alabama was loafing around the field, especially on that Makai Denzi counter that he ran for like 52 yards. He was never really into the. If you like, again, they've had a sense of pride and they're like, oh, we're playing better. Again, you're facing like Mercer and Wisconsin, teams that you're going to blow out. Now you're going up against Georgia, and you take one play off. That's it. Like it's like that could cost you 6 points. You could cost you a touchdown. So, anyways, I'm going to keep on ranting on this game. I don't want to go on a Florida rant. So, that being said, you saw DJ Lagways in a walking boot. I'm just saying, it might be. They said he's going to come back for the Texas game because they have a bye week. The only bye I'm seeing is him waving bye-bye to this year because that red shirt's coming, folks. Mark it here. Talk about a lock of the week. No, but anyways, uh, that's going to wrap up this episode of Picks. You guys know the drill. You can find us on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. Like the video. Give us a comment. Apple Podcasts. Subscribe there. Rate us 5 stars, and you can find us on Spotify as well. Eric, any final words on that?
no, man, just remember, when you put these locks in and you're winning that money, just always remember you're going to keep winning that money as long as you keep liking and subscribing. And when you do subscribe and you press that button, just don't press it. Smash that button. Make sure you get these updates coming in so you can make sure you get more money in your pocket.
All
That's
right,
all I
folks.
got.
That's wrapping it up. Thanks for listening. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll catch you next time here on 305 Insights. Have a good one, folks.